So AMD is popping about 40% as of the making of this video. This story, of course, is the OpenAI AMD deal to deploy 6 gigawatts of GPUs and a potential 10% stake ownership of OpenAI in AMD. It is a huge story. It is massive, especially given the fact that OpenAI just signed a very similar deal with NVIDIA not that long ago. So we're going to talk about what happened, why AMD and OpenAI are getting into bed, each company's perspective. Is it potentially too late to invest in AMD, given the fact that you just seen a 40% run up, where things are heading? And as a little bonus, at the end of the video, I'll let you know about a few hidden gems under the radar stocks that will be heavily impacted by what just happened, and yet nobody's going to talk about them. Everybody will be focused on AMD, on OpenAI, on NVIDIA, but below the surface, there's a lot of opportunities brewing, which of course, as always, most of the market is going to miss out on. Now, as always, don't click nothing, don't smash nothing, don't buy nothing, just listen. Now let's talk about AMD first. And I gotta say that AMD is not a stranger to my community because we had it on our top stocks list ever since March of 2021, when inflation used to be transitory, according to Mr. Powell. Now, it is not the only stock we talked about over the past 4 years. Stocks like CrowdStrike, like Fortinet, almost 200% each as well. AMD did 170% since then. And even stocks like Oracle that did almost 400% since we added them. They're part of the list that we've been compiling for the past 5 years. And if you want access to that list and the community of 25,000 members we have in the Academy, I invite you to check it out. Patreon.com/Tom Nash. We'd love to have you check it out and join our team. Now, this is a massive change, a massive, massive move for the entire AI infrastructure field. Now, you have OpenAI just hitting a massive fast forward button on the entire GPU industry, and considering the fact that that industry was already going at 5,000 miles per hour, this is a huge change. Somehow it got accelerated even more. Now, according to the terms of the deal, OpenAI gets a potential of a 10% stake in AMD, but it also is committing to buying up to 6 gigawatts of GPUs from AMD over the next few years, starting with 1 gigawatt in 2026. Now, just to explain to you the magnitude of this, the peak capacity of Finland is about 14 to 15 gigawatts. And this deal is about 1/3 of Finland's max capacity. And it actually goes on top of the 10 gigawatt deal that OpenAI just signed with NVIDIA, which is absolutely insane. Now, from OpenAI, there's a lot of reasons why this is a great deal. You secure another supplier. You're no longer completely dependent on NVIDIA as a sole provider of GPUs. You reduce risk of supply chains, of interruptions. And because you want your supplier, the secondary supplier you just added, which is AMD, to be around and to be able to provide, you got to support that supplier, give him money, give him support, which is a great thing for AMD as well. Not to mention the fact that it will improve costs across the board because this means more competition, better cost structures for companies like OpenAI and the hyperscalers. That is a very important element of this deal. Now, from the angle of AMD here, the advantages are massive. You're talking about a huge credibility boost finally happening. They can finally say we're just as good as NVIDIA GPUs. They've been claiming that for years, but it was kind of cringe because nobody was paying attention and they didn't have the NVIDIA cloud. They finally get their one golden ticket, their one client that's basically just as good as all the NVIDIA clients. This is a huge deal for AMD. And as I said, for many, many months, AMD does not need to beat NVIDIA. All they got to do is hang around because we're talking about a massive total addressable market. If AMD is number 2 in this market, there's so much demand NVIDIA simply cannot provide all this capacity. The number 2 provider, which is AMD at this point, is going to make a lot of money, a lot of benefit without dethroning NVIDIA. This is the main part people never got about AMD. They were reluctant to put money in this company because they saw the dominance of NVIDIA, but what they really didn't pay attention to is that AMD never tried to dethrone these guys. All they got to do is coexist in this massive opportunity market. And for NVIDIA, this has very little impact. Sure, there's another competitor. Sure, CUDA, the software side, isn't a monopoly anymore, and now ROCm is actually being used by OpenAI, potentially. And sure, there's more competitors in the market. But the demand is so massive, and the growth in the demand is so massive that NVIDIA, which is clearly the superior provider of GPUs, is not going to be short of clients anytime soon. And you know what? This is a very cool deal because this is a win-win, not lose deal. On the one hand, NVIDIA is not losing anything really here. On the other hand, OpenAI and AMD both gaining a lot. So as a sum for the AI infrastructure market, this is a really good deal. And the crazy part about this is that while most of investors will be focused on this triangle of NVIDIA, AMD, OpenAI, they're going to miss out on a bunch of companies that are massively advantageous right now because of what happened. They will benefit greatly from this, and yet they will be below the radar because everybody will be hyper-focused on the obvious. I'll talk about that towards the end of the video. You don't want to miss out on that. So let's talk about AMD because I did promise to give you an answer to a very important question. Is this too late to buy NVIDIA following a spike like this? Now, as of the making of this video, the stock is up almost 40%. By the time this video comes out, it may be 80 or 8. Who cares? Let's look at AMD from a fundamental perspective. And there's no better way to do that than Stock MVP, stock-mvp.com, a software I built specifically for this to analyze stocks, break it down to the bare fundamentals, and see if it's shit or legit. Now, in the case of AMD, we have a score of 85 out of 100 on our MVP scorecard, which is one of the best scores we ever had on the platform. And if you actually look a little bit deeper, the crazy part about this is that it actually missed one of the parameters by just a fraction, by just a hair. It should have had a 90 out of 100. What am I talking about? Well, on the scorecard, they missed 10 points because they have a PE of about 30. Forward PE is actually 32. And the thing is, revenue and net income are both something we look at. And for this company to have a margin of 10% would have given them a perfect score. And here they had 9.57 instead of 10%, which means they lost 5 points. So AMD literally lost 5 points by a fraction of a hair. They could have had almost a perfect score. So as far as the MVP scorecard goes, this company is one of the best looked at. Now, if you also look at another feature we have on Stock MVP, which I think is a killer, we can see what happened with the insider buying and selling of the stock. And if you looked at this stock 3 months ago, as you will see on the screen right now, you could have seen that insiders were buying a lot more than they were selling. And that doesn't happen often in companies of that magnitude. And since June of the past 3 months, you can see a lot more buys than sells because insiders usually know what's up. And if you look at the insider, you can also look at the institutional side on the other hand, and you'll see that institutional investors have been piling into AMD as well over the past few years. Which means that AMD, from a fundamental perspective, from insiders, from institutional, it has really done well. And if you look at the bare fundamentals, look at the past 5 years when everybody was saying that this stock is just losing money, it's not going anywhere. For the past 5 years, revenue is up 283%. Net income is up 357%. Free cash flow is up 538%. And they have 7.3 billion of cash versus only 4.7 billion of debt. And the forward PE is actually only 32, which is not anything I can say is expensive, not for this sort of company. Which brings me to our CEF valuator. The 5-year price target on Stock MVP based on the current parameters is the bear case puts it at $273 in 5 years, which is a 31% upside. The medium case puts it at $430, which is a 106% upside. And the bull case puts it at $585, which is a 181% upside for the next 5 years. This stock based on stock MVP seems like it's a really interesting prospect to research further, and I urge you to do so. Check out stock MVP, get your 7-day free trial on, and by the way, we're actually launching stock MVP 2.0 within a couple of weeks, and that thing will mean the prices will go up as well. If you want to reserve the existing price you have right now in stock MVP, which is going to be half of the new price, get your subscription right now, and then when we actually launch Stock MVP 2.0, you will be grandfathered under the old price for life, which is the really cool feature. Now, let's move on. As far as OpenAI, they just signed a massive deal with NVIDIA for 10 gigawatts of GPUs. Why would they need AMD? Well, look, the biggest constraint for OpenAI isn't money. It is compute. They need as much compute as they can get their hands on. And the more capacity they have, and the less risk of having a single supplier, and the better leveraging cost they have once they have multiple suppliers, serves that purpose perfectly. Now, it's not 100% guaranteed that this deal is going to work out. Nothing in life is guaranteed, except, I guess, death and taxes, but this is neither. Because you have a lot of risks here and a lot of uncertainty that I want people to understand before they pile into NVIDIA blindly because of what just happened. You have execution risk. AMD still has to deliver. We haven't seen that happen yet. There's a lot of blue sky talk, but we haven't seen AMD do the actual work. And OpenAI will have to find a way to balance two different vendors, two different software. CUDA and ROCm are completely different, two teams. And if AMD actually gives a 10% stake to OpenAI, you have a lot of cultural questions between Sam Altman and AMD, a lot of politics, how the governance is going to work. There's a potential clash there. So it's not as simple as it seems on the press release. And it's important to understand. But there is one major shift here that happens by definition on day one, which is CUDA, NVIDIA's way to hold on to this monopoly, so to speak. CUDA is no longer the only game in town. Their software, which has so far been the only game in town, is now not the only one. We have an alternative, and it's called ROCm. This is the AMD one. And OpenAI supposedly will use both, which is a huge credibility boost for AMD, and it opens up a world of opportunities for this company to put their feet in the door for the first time in a while. And before you dump your NVIDIA stock because of what I just said, hold on. CUDA is still the gold standard. NVIDIA is still the gold standard. They're still number one. AMD isn't dethroning them. They're opening up a little hatch so they can get some peanuts and some money and some food so they can be number two. I wouldn't be betting against NVIDIA because of what just happened. NVIDIA is not the casualty here. Now, there are huge beneficiaries here. There are massive companies who will benefit from this, which nobody is talking about because everybody's hyper-focused on the freaking obvious, as always. Now, the world of opportunities that companies in the world of cooling the data centers, in the world of powering the data centers, simply put, the picks and shovels businesses in the AI infrastructure sector are going to fly to the stratosphere. And everybody's going to miss out because it's not sexy to talk about cooling and power. And yet, I've done exactly that. I have a video of the top 10 picks and shovels plays of the AI infrastructure, and it's there for you for free. This video contains all the companies who will benefit from what just happened, and they're not on anybody's radar, which means the price is actually a lot better than investing in the obvious. The video is on the screen right now. Go click it, watch it. Would love to see you there. I'll see you next one. Peace.